Okay, no worries.
Hello, welcome to the fourth webinar in this series for Incubator Cooperative. This is a public webinar. However, all of the participants in our accelerator program are also in attendance today. Today, we're fortunate to have Paul Barnett run us through some of his experiences to help us build our cooperatives. Paul is the chairman of Incubator Co-op. He's also works in the space of impact design with asymmetric innovation and is a partner at Ethical Fields. And it was actually Paul and my initiative out of Ethical Fields which spurred us to get in touch with the likes of Anthony McMullen and Rowan Clark, which ultimately led to the formation of Incubator Co-op. So Paul's got a deep experience and understanding of the co-op sector and has some pretty great ideas as to some of the things we can adopt from the innovation area and bring into the co-op sector. So I'm going to hand it over to Paul, and yeah, this might use up quite a lot of time today, but hopefully there'll be some time for question and answers towards the end. So thank you, Paul. Over to you.
No problems. How much time do you want it to take, Andrew?
I don't have it. I don't think I've got a hard and fast preference. So if the yeah, so they've been between 30 and 45 minutes, the presentations, and that leaves, you know, however much time for questions and answers.
Okay, all right. Well, let's aim for 30. But look, if people have questions as we're going through, just pipe up. You know, over the video con, it's always good to raise your hand when you need to, so it's nice and friendly. Yeah. So look, I'll get underway. Andrew's introduced me. I've got my hands on a couple of different things and have a background in research and innovation sector. So I worked in CSIRO for 10 years. I've been a sort of freelancer and working in a couple of different businesses for the last 5 years around not just impact design, but also design generally. And I think that variety of experience has put me in touch with a lot of different tools, and so trying to work out, you know, there's no shortage of tools to help us, you know, develop our businesses, but there's always a challenge around working out which one to use when. So I'm sure lots of you guys are using different tools, and this is just I guess I'll do a bit of a high level background around design and how it's sort of used and why it's important, and then go and mention a few tools that may be useful for where you're at. But as I said, just jump in any stage if you have any questions. How do I go next slide here when it's not? There we go. I just wanted to show, I don't know if anybody's seen this. This is the Incubator Co-op board. So just putting faces to names there. So I'm on the far left, obviously. In the middle is Jose Ramos, and he's a member of Incubator Co-op as well. He helped us do a strategy day, and that's why he's in there. He's a very highly qualified futurist as well. You know, put your hand up if this is what your journey feels a bit like in terms of developing, you know, the co-op. You sort of feel like you understand something, and then you get a little bit extra understanding, and all of a sudden you don't understand anything at all, and it's all a mystery. And so this is they call it the design squiggle, and effectively it's about, you know, you're just roaming around trying to understand the space that you're working in, and over time patterns emerge, and you generate, you know, through your observations, and you generate insights, and then those insights, you know, turn And that's what, you know, the kind of business can then fall around. So, you know, this is everything that I'm talking about today is probably actually about how do you navigate that first part, where there's a lot of grey and there's no rules, and it can be just really difficult. And so I think co-design and complex systems, you know, kind of two go-to sort of spaces that we use often to try and get a feeling for how to kind of proceed. One of the really excellent things that I think around just sort of the types of businesses that you guys are proposing and working on is that you're, you know, and this, you can call me out here if I don't understand it, but I think, you know, there's in the startup kind of community generally, there's a real big buzz around like, I've got this piece of tech and I'm just looking for product market fit. I want to find someone who's going to buy it. Right. And so our businesses typically start the other way around, where we you know, deeply feel a need or a problem or a challenge or opportunity, and then we're looking for a way to solve that. So we, you know, is that fair? Is that a nod some heads? Yeah. So I think that's a real bonus to be starting from that position, because there's a lot of money wasted and a lot of time wasted trying to find someone to buy something which maybe isn't that useful. Yeah. So I think that's a really, you know, important point to make. So yeah, I think I've probably already made this point around, we're just trying to spend as little effort as possible to do things to give us as much information as possible without risking, you know, the farm before we get too far down the track, right? So we're just trying to gather information about, you know, how do we design our products or services or the business. And so design, who's come across design before, co-design or human-centered design? Yeah. So you may well be more expert in it than me. So for everybody else, there's an ideal solution to every problem that is at the center of these design lenses. And so there are three very typical design lenses, and they're around desirability. Does someone want this thing that we're producing, this or service that we're producing? Feasibility, can it technically be produced? Can it be acquired? Can it be created or built? Can we actually build this thing? And then finally, viability. This is the three typical lenses. So viability, should we do this? Is there a business model we can wrap around this product or service that can generate enough income to pay for what it costs to produce? And so that's the three typical design lenses. And the fourth one that we've added is around scalability. And I think when we're talking about cooperative scalability, it probably should be right scale, because it might be the right scale with 5 members delivering a very local impact in a very sustainable way into the future, and it doesn't need to grow to be as successful as it is required to be by the members. There might be other cooperatives that aim to provide, you know, say sort of like a platform service, and it could be something like Twitter, you know, and in that sense, then scaling that so that the impact of that service is greater is probably desirable. So if you drop out any one of those lenses, then it's possible that the business doesn't work. So each one of those really needs to be thought about and satisfied. And so then, you know, what are the tools, you know, that we can use to do that? First, before I get into tools, I just wanted to mention I was having a bit of a think about, you know, co-design and what it means for co-ops. And there are these principles that probably line up between there are some co-design principles, and then there are the 7, you know, co-op principles. And so being outcome focused, I think, is super important. Like, so as a founding team, understanding what it is that, what is the outcome that you're here to achieve, what's the difference that you're going to make, understanding that so that you can revisit it, reevaluate it, and regularly kind of just make sure that that's what everything that you're doing is bumping towards that you're going to dent the universe in that way. So that's really important. Inclusiveness, so including and I think in the co-op sector we're generally pretty good at this, including critical stakeholders, because they are all experts in their own experience, and that's incredibly powerful if you can include all of the different stakeholders that are going to play a role in the business. Participative means that we're open to the fact that through doing the process of design, through having the discussions and the workshops and writing stuff down on post-it notes and whiteboards and just working and brainstorming together, we're going to generate a lot of new knowledge. And some of that's going to be really powerful, really useful in the design of what we're doing. And so we have to be open to that participative. Everybody has a role in working together and translating each other's thoughts and ideas, and together we're going to come up with something new, and that's great. I think just in the essence of that cooperative principle around cooperatives help cooperatives, there's I sort of put this create to share as a principle. And so what that means for me is that simple ideas and or simplicity in message makes it easier for people to understand, and that's what we're trying to do with design, is just state things, phrase things in ways that people can understand so that they can be debated, tested, developed, improved, and we would do that amongst our own team, of course, in the process. But I think if we have a higher goal for sometimes the design might be something that needs to be kept under wraps, of course, but other times the design might be something that you want to share, and so you could share your insights and observations in a way that helps someone in another locality. If you're a geographic-based cooperative, another locality could pick that up and work with that to say, okay, well, we're slightly different in these ways, but yeah, you've done a lot of the work to help us understand and communicate what's going on for us. So that's useful. And the last principle that I think is really important is around I don't know whether this makes any sense, but let's try it on: mindful prototyping. So when I talked just before about scaling and impact and thinking about the impact that you want to have, prototyping is super important. Being able to iterate quickly, iterate cheaply and early on in small ways. And so as we're doing that in a mindful way around not just how does this prototype inform how we design our product or service and how we design our business, but what are the potential impacts, positive and negative, in a societal, environmental, economic sense outside our cooperative? What are the impacts of that outside? So are we designing an extractive business, for example, like that's going to produce social disadvantage in some other part of society? And so the net positive benefit of what we're doing, if we design it in a certain way, there may be a net negative benefit. And so I think it's just about being mindful that that there are many pathways to impacts, and positive and negative, and everything that we do has positive and negative consequences. So thinking about that as we're doing it is important. Should I stop there? Any questions at that point? It's sort of high level, kind of this is the introductory kind of area. Making sense? Thumbs up. Yeah, it's all right. Okay, good. So what does that all point to? It sort of points to one thing: get out of the building. So there's a guy, have you heard of Steve Blank at all? He's a bit of a guru in startup land, and so this is one of his favorite phrases, and I'm sure, and many people use it, but, getting out of the building means going and talking to people, talking to stakeholders, potential customers, potential members. It's one of the beautiful things about cooperatives is that we actually start by doing that. And that's how, generally the ideas are formed, is through this kind of, collective, interpretation and understanding. But it bears repetition that it's easy for us to think that because we understand the problem or the opportunity and we think we know how to solve it, that there are many ways to understand a problem, and that we really need to understand how different people come to the same problem and what their different perspectives on what a solution might look like and what are the boundaries around that. So that's, I think, to urge you to keep staying out of the building and keep talking to people and keep asking questions and continue to just reaffirm your understanding or find new ways of understanding what you're doing. So there is no shortage of tools. You can use any number of tools that you like. I'm just going to present a couple here that I think are probably useful, and also give you a link to this design, think, make, break, repeat.com, which has many other tools that you might like to, that's just one place, but if you Google any particular problem you have, you'll find lots and lots of tools. So one of the things that I mentioned up front was, just having a shared understanding, being outcome, the principle of being outcome focused and having a shared understanding of that amongst the team. So hands up if you think that you've got that nailed and you've written it down, like the outcome that you're working towards. Sort of, yeah. So, well, this might be useful then. It's you just need a whiteboard and an hour, divide it up into 3 panels. There's a 4th panel which you can get into if you get serious about it, but let's just go with the 3 panels of brainstorming. What is it basically, in a sense, you're writing down sensory phrases about what it feels, what you see, hear, feel, do, and say in a preferred future. And I might say, I want to. My preferred future is that I can surf super well, and I catch a barrel every single time I go out. And that's my preferred future. Now, it may not be realistic, but that's what I want, right? And so lots and lots of strategy kind of stops there and says, all right, let's design a world, like let's design our programs around this, like our preferred future. The reality is that we need to think about what's the opposite of that? What's the disowned future? The disowned future is that I don't live near the beach. I live in Brisbane. I don't live that close to the beach. It's an effort to go to the beach. So I'm probably not going to get fit enough to get really super good at surfing. And I need a better surfboard. So what am I going to do about that? That's my disowned future, is that I'm not going to move closer to the beach because I can't for some reason, right? So, but I don't kind of accept that in my preferred future, right? It's just something that, I just don't think that's, it's not real for me. So that's my disowned future, is that I'm never going to get good at surfing because I don't live close enough to the beach, and I won't invest in a good surfboard. And the integrated future is when we take those 2 panels together and we say, okay, well, maybe there's a future where I can just be happier with how I surf, where I surf a bit better, and I maybe invest a little bit of money in a slightly better surfboard that gets me just enough, floats me just enough because I'm getting slow and old, and I can, and I can have a better time in the water. And that's actually what it should be about, is I'm just having a great time in the water, not that I'm catching barrels every day. And so does that make a bit of sense? We're sort of narrowing in on a realistic future that we can all kind of share. But the important thing is that you do it as a group, so that the whole team's, whole team's behind it and together. And then you've got this you know, you've got kind of an integrated future could then be like you know, you can cut that down into a single statement, and it's like, okay, this is where we're all going. Do we all agree? And you can revisit that and come back to it whenever you need to. But it just sort of helps have a shared view. Okay, but the main benefit there is that it doesn't have to take a lot of time because you already probably thought about it a lot, but it's about surfacing the differences in opinion about what the future should be like and making sure that if there are differences that you work them out. Yeah. Okay. Who's seen Business Model Canvas? Yeah. Are you using it? Yeah. Some nods, maybe. Yes, no. So it's a pretty popular tool to design a business these days, and it often gets put in place of a plan, like a traditional plan. So there's the thinking goes that a business model canvas is rapid. You can put it together pretty quickly, and you can kind of sketch it, you know, maybe in half an hour, right? You can sketch the business out like that, and it doesn't have to be right, but it's a prototype, right? It's an iteration. So you get started, and then you can use that to have a discussion with your colleagues about, like, you know, is this your understanding of the value proposition? Is this your understanding of how we're going to relate to the customers or the members? What's our cost look like, and how are we making money to pay for our costs? These things are universal, right? So if you just notice on the right-hand side, everyone can see the screen, right? I didn't check that, but I'm assuming you can. On the right-hand side, there's I've added a few boxes, and they are, you know, what I think is particular to co-ops, and there may be other things that you'd want to put in, you know, attached to a standard business model canvas, but these are the things that I kind of thought of. And so the member relationship is, you know, how are you relating to members? Is it going to be online? Are you you know, is it in person? Are you touching them every day? Is it, you know, once a year? Or what's the relationship? You know about active member provisions, right? Which is an important thing. And then member segments. So understanding that, of course, all your members are they're not in a single bucket. So there are going to be members who join for different reasons that want different things out of the same cooperative. And so is it important to understand that there are segments within your member base that should be dealt with separately or not? You know, you might think about it anyway, that just to understand what motivates your member base and help kind of manage that a little bit. And then I just added that last box down there, draw it, because there are kind of never enough diagrams on these things. So if you can draw, and, you know, because it's a co-op, it's probably complex because you've got members and customers and all sorts of things going on. So, you know, maybe drawing a diagram kind of might help. I won't go into detail on all those other things, but there are all the other boxes, but there are heaps of resources on those online. If you go to strategizer.com, I imagine, or go to YouTube and just type in business model canvas how to, there are heaps of videos to show you. And so I just wanted to give you a taste here and talk about how you might use it in a co-op context, if you haven't already. Oh yeah, I'm just seeing is that there's some chat going on. Is that for me? Do I need to check that?
Yeah, Paul, if you don't mind, have a look at the questions and then decide whether you want to address them at the end. But
right, okay.
Go in parking lot.
Yeah, I can't see the chat box for some reason. Maybe while I'm presenting, so perhaps I just saw a thing flash up, and it's yes.
Both were pretty. One question was from me, just saying we need a work through co-op example of preferred, disowned, and integrated. And I think Elle has just asked for an example of a co-op canvas filled in. Both of them is looking for co-op examples, if that's possible.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can do, if you want to skip back to the preferred, disowned, and integrated. We did this for the Incubator Coop, so we can definitely share that afterwards, and it effectively said that, if I remember rightly, Wardy, you can fill in a little bit as well. I was looking for the picture of the whiteboard just before, and I couldn't find it, but we'll find it. Basically, preferred was that we create a swell of new cooperative businesses that suck the capital out of the old system and put it into the cooperative sector, and everybody just wants to do business the cooperative way, right? That's our preferred future. The disowned future was that, well, the current system's pretty entrenched, and maybe that's we're just going to struggle to get traction, and that there are the capital, the way capital works and is available to businesses just means that it's hard to make that happen. And the integrated future is kind of what you see here in the Incubator Co-op. It's trying to arrange sources of capital that are more appropriate for cooperatives. It's trying to provide alternatives to to startups and founders that might be more amenable to a cooperative pathway, and that sort of thing. So we'll share the whiteboard, and you'll see that. Yeah. I also mentioned before, Jose Ramos is in the Incubator Co-op, and I'm sure he could give you a couple of tips. Yeah. Have we got a question?
We've got an echo going on, Paul. I don't know what
it's
that's
gone.
about.
It's gone. It's gone now. Yep.
Okay. Elle had one more question, and that was, have you got an example of co-op canvas filled in? And I think we can't share the one from Incubator Co-op that is Anthony McMullen's content, but again, it's possible for us to put this as a resource on Incubator Co-op and put links to a completed one at the end of this webinar.
Yeah, I'll also, if it's, if people find it useful, we can create a Google slide template, so you can just kind of, copy that and then type straight into it, if that would be useful. So I'll move on. So just in the interest of time, I think, yeah. So in terms of understanding and segmenting your member base and your customer base, so personas is a really is a pretty go-to kind of resource for designers. So probably folks have used this if they've come across design. Again, you can kind of do this pretty quickly and revise it as you learn. But what you're trying to do is pick a type of customer or a type of member, and then just start writing about what they like, what they don't like, what's what they're trying to get done. How do they and you start to help you think, picture a person that you can then think, okay, and then you usually give them names. And so maybe this one's Barbara or something, and Barbara is 35, and she lives in the city, and her daily routine involves riding a bike to work and eating out on the way home. And you sort of build up a profile around what she does and what her routines are like, and then there's a way for you then to sort of start thinking about her as she intersects with your business, your product or your service, and how she uses it and what it would mean to her. And so then when you're designing the service, then you can say, okay, well, what's Barbara think about, what would Barbara think about this change we're going to make? Or what would Barbara think about, X, Y, and Z new service? Or if we increase the price by $10, or if we decrease the price by $10, what does that mean for Barbara? Because we know a little bit about Barbara, and we think there are 20% of our members are Barbaras. Yeah. So that's the kind of thinking there. Again, I've just got a link there. OpenDesignKit.org is where I picked this template up, and so there's one there. There are lots of places. Again, YouTube is your friend for a lot of this. Just type in how to draw up a persona, and there are plenty of resources. But yeah, it should help you understand what are the buckets of different types of people within your cohort. What do we got next? Oh yeah, and we also talked a little bit about prototyping, right? So is anyone doing prototyping now, or has final products that they've been prototyping in the past? No, maybe it's happening on chat. I can't see it. So prototypes, just in case, like it's a bit unfamiliar. So prototype is a low fidelity kind of version of the thing that you imagine, the concept that you imagine will be the product or service. And so, like it could be, I saw one yesterday, which is great. It was a box. It was for a box of veggies. It was the concept, but the veggies were actually cutouts from like a magazine or a catalog or something, just paper placed in to show how the veggies would be arranged in the box. And so that's a great prototype that you can kind of just, magic up quickly to demonstrate to someone, this is how the product will look, or this is how the service will be. And it's the same with if it's an app, like you can draw up on paper if you want, draw up like, this is the thing, these are the things that the app does, these are the functions. You press here and then you go to this page over here, and it shows you these things. So I think you can think of it in hardware, like hardware tech prototypes is kind of often the thing, or wireframes is often how people kind of think about prototypes in apps. But I know some of you have fairly advanced hardware tech kind of things, and others are more service oriented. So you'll find that even something as basic as a half page describing the service that you're going to provide, or that you think you're going to provide, and describing some things about how people might use that with a picture, even if it's not your picture, just a picture of something that can help people kind of understand what it will be like, and using that to talk to people and say, hey, we're thinking of this product, we're thinking of this service, what do you think about that? And so it doesn't cost really doesn't cost very much to do that kind of thing, but it really helps people engage with the product and service and give you feedback before you've spent money, developing something, either hardware or software, and launching, and then waiting and fingers crossed, hoping that someone's going to like it. That's not where we want to be. Where we want to be is like, iteratively gaining confidence, reducing the risk, and prototyping early and often is a really good way to do that. So I mentioned Steve Blank before. So I think this course, how to build a startup, it's free on Udacity. It's very kind of conventional, startup centric around how do we, make the most profit in the least amount of time and get investors to invest and all that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, if you're pragmatic, you can take a lot out of that course in terms of how to approach things. And if you just substitute member for customer in that, and maybe profit for sustainability, then you're a long way there. So I think that's a useful kind of course to have a look at. Oh yeah, and I didn't think I put this in the end, but I did. There you go. So one of the last things I was going to say was just a reminder that moving quickly is really a big part of the game. Wardy knows this, and I'm sure he'll be expounding that. But it used to be that the big eat the small, right? In business, the big eat the small, they used to say, and now it's the fast eat the slow. So this is a picture of someone who's a bit smaller than the other characters in the scene, but she's winning the race because she's faster. So that's That's everything from me. Thank you. I look forward to any questions. I'll stop sharing screen, Wardy, so I can see the questions if that's how we're going to do it.
Sure, Paul. Thank you for that. There are some responses from Elle and Moira in particular.
Yes.
And probably easy. I think Tobias has his hand up. I don't know if you can see that. So he might have a question. And Tobias, if you do, just unmute yourself to ask it, please. Or I can unmute you if you don't know where your mute button is.
I was responding to one of the questions.
Ah, sorry, Tobias. Any questions for Paul while you're off mute?
No, it's interesting stuff I've sort of seen before. So and worked through it on a couple of occasions. But I think it'd be good to experiment with it with a co-op rather than just a straight out business.
Yep. Yeah, there are a few attempts at co-opifying some of these things out in the wild, but I haven't actually used them. So I wasn't sure which one to bring along, but I think there's a platform co-op development toolkit that might be useful. And I know Wardy mentioned that Anthony McMullen has a business model canvas that he's worked on. I just wasn't able. That's he uses that in his business, so he kind of wants to keep a tight hold on it. But there are, I think, like, I encourage the group to kind of try things and then report back and let us know what you've found useful and what kind of resonates. Yeah. Yeah, pretty impressive. Elle, you sound like you're a long way down the track. That's amazing. Can you talk about any of your experience in in using different kind of business design tools or things that you've found useful for you?
Yeah, so we've been doing co-design right from the outset. And so the whole topic around of that question of why does it take, so we're doing a co-housing community, and why does it take so long? Because there's a lot of things, there's a lot of moving parts to consider. There's that whole 7 generations thinking process that comes down. It's very reiterative, and it's good enough for now, safe enough to try, let's review it in 3 months now, that kind of stuff. So that whole human-centered design, collaborative design is actually what we do, and we actually do it really well with governance structures in place around sociocracy. And so that's actually, so socios means, those who don't know here, socios just means people, those people who associate together, and ocracy means governance. So those people who are associating together, they do the governance together, which is actually the essence of what cooperatives has always been about. So yeah, we've already been along that way, and we're pretty much, well, I would say that we're, on a good day, I reckon we're halfway through. On a bad day, I reckon we're probably just taking baby steps still. But we do have already a lot of policy documentation in place, and that's actually been really good. Actually, this week, over the weekend, I wrote our active member rule, and this morning I used it. So it was pretty interesting. I actually wrote to one of our members, and I CC'd the two Google. I CC'd our membership policy, which we wrote at least 12 months ago, and I also wrote CC'd the active member rule, which we're going to obviously submit for the registrar. So I put those two Google documents in the email, and I pressed send. And I still feel wobbly, but that's okay. But so that using that policy actually puts it in place to say, I'm not imagining this stuff. These are the things that I'm finding problematic. This is my request. This is what I'm backing it up with. And we all live happily ever after, I hope. That's the hope. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, well done. I'm just going to take you up on the why does it take so much time question, because we get that a lot, right? The reality is, if you didn't do it together, you might get there quicker, but it wouldn't be worth as much because it's going to be broken pretty soon, and you've lost all of that time and effort and energy in the meantime, having to go back to square one because you've done, you've invested in something that's not quite right. So if you're lucky, it works, but certainly in circumstances like yours where you've got a lot of moving parts, it's kind of the only way to do it if you want it to be sustainable. So it's probably the quickest way to do it, even though it feels slow.
So has anybody else got a question for Paul? I'm thinking that some of this might have precedent with you, Sam, and the local economics team.
Yeah, I had more of a comment around the prototyping part of things, especially from a technical point of view. There's a bunch of tools out there that allow you to create sort of wireframe-ish designs that you can quickly mock up and then to prove a concept. And then, but the important thing is that they're throwaway, so you're never going to keep them around for a long time. They're just there to prove a point, and then feed that into your actual development process. That's what I've done a lot in my job.
You would have, you would have, yeah. Do you use Balsamic, Sam, or what do you use?
I've used Balsamic in the past. Yeah, I'm not a designer myself. I'm a developer, so the designers like to use their own tools, and none of them are compatible with Windows and all that kind of stuff. So that's an issue. But Balsamic's a good one. But I think the key point is that it's throwaway. A lot of times people think that they can then use that for the real life thing, and then you end up with a headache. So
so that's one.
Carry
on, Sam.
I was just going to say, if you're doing like you were saying, like a piece of paper, then it's obviously throwaway. But with technology, the line is a bit more blurred because they like to make it in Balsamic. You can create like your CSS components, which then export, and it's kind of like, oh, I could use this, or should I use it? But in my opinion, it's all like just throw that away, build something properly.
So that's one tool anyway that people could pick up and use pretty quickly if they're designing software anyway, and they don't have any software skills. You can kind of design what it would look like and what it would do, and that is very powerful to take to a potential user or someone like Sam that has to go and build it, so that they know what you're trying to build.
Yeah, so you can create the layouts, and you can create interactions between them, and you can create notes on how things should work. So it's quite useful for someone like myself to see that kind of those workings in an actual interactive app.
Oh, Elle, did you get a reasonable description of what Balsamic is? Not really. I'll send a link, and then that's the easiest way to do it, and you can see it. Maybe, are there any other questions while we're doing that?
Paul, Moira here, if you were starting again.
Hey, Moira. Yep.
If you were starting again, what would be the thing that you would do differently?
With the Incubator Co-op, or?
Yeah, like starting a new co-op, given that the Incubator Co-op, I guess, wasn't your first co-op?
No. Was it? It might have been. We've got a few that were running along at the same time. It's probably, it might have been the first one we registered though. Yeah.
Okay.
Or the first one I registered, but yeah.
So
Not
if you
for
think back to
the other
that,
guys.
what would be the thing you would do differently now?
I think I'd probably follow my own advice around prototyping because we spent quite a bit of time developing the platform, and that, you know, it's still got its issues that I mean, you know, you guys can use it and see how it is. It's sort of fit for purpose, but it's, you know, we're limited in some of the things that we can do right now. And so we would like it to do a whole bunch of other things that it doesn't currently do. But I think trying to understand, you know, because I think we just sort of thought, oh yeah, like a social platform is kind of the thing that's going to get us the service for the members that they need to be able to interact and trade services and work with each other, find each other and work with each other and build new projects. For me, I think that's still an experiment, whether that's actually whether a social platform is actually the core of what that needs to be. So I think, you know, maybe prototyping a little bit earlier and working with folks like yourselves to say, you know, what is the absolute minimum kind of thing you need to be able to find someone else to work on your project with you that's got the same passion and interest that you do, and some skills that augment what you've got, or complementary to what you have. So I think that's probably the biggest lesson for Incubator Co-op. I think we did a pretty good job of working out what the outcome that we want is. I think actually we've defined that pretty well. We may not have communicated it as well as we could, but I know that, you know, amongst the people that have been developing the project, that's really been a good thing for us to come together around and be a team on. I think one of the biggest challenges is just the contribution of time, obviously. Like, we're all volunteers, and so having everybody having the time to be able to put in has been a challenge. So I don't know what I'd do differently about that, but that's an obvious challenge for our case here. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks. It's a really good question, though. Yeah. I'm just pasting in balsamic link if I can't find my cursor. I don't sound very proficient on a computer at the moment, but I promise this is not usual. Yeah, I don't have a cursor. We'll keep going.
Well, I think what we're going to have to do, Paul, is just link a bunch of these resources, you know, template, and make them available. We'll turn this into a course in and of itself, or a lesson within one of the community development courses.
Okay.
We still do have, you know, 10 minutes, and I think it would be great to get some traction on one or more of the cohort. So if anybody is in need of, you know, testing some assumptions, validating stuff, or has questions, this is a great opportunity to speak to Paul and pick his brains.
Paul, I was wondering about if you popped up that slide again of the business model canvas with the co-op bit in it, and maybe just talk us through those 2 extra squares that you've got that were co-op specific, you know, and maybe one of us can be guinea pigs for you in all of that. Because I think
sure.
most of the people on the call would have some experience of the business model canvas in one form or another. But understanding how you're thinking those extra pieces interact with what we might already know, I think would be quite useful. I don't know if other people disagree with me. Shake your head, or if you agree with me, maybe nod. Just to give Paul a bit of an idea test.
Yep. Okay. So before we go over, I just wanted to show you, this is balsamic L particularly. These kind of screens you can see on the screen are the kind of things you can produce with balsamic. So you're just drafting up. Does that make sense? You're drafting up. They call them wireframes in this circumstance. Sort of drafting up what applications will look like on a screen. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, Moira, the question then is just, how would we fill that out? Maybe we should just do it.
Yeah, I was thinking just given the time, the member relationship and the member segments, like what would that look like? And even just using one of the co-ops here on the call or the co-op incubator, just so that we can have a bit of an appreciation of those elements in the context of the business model canvas. Yeah.
So I think it's, member relationship for me in this context means what is the relationship between the cooperative and the member? How do they interact with each other? What are they expecting from each other, and how do they turn that into, how does that characterize into a series of interactions that makes up, a relationship, series of interactions and expectations that make up a relationship. So do you want to maybe
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So if we think about member relationship and the customer relationship piece, how would you see those as being different? Because I guess when I've come to the business model canvas thinking about the co-op, I've kind of replaced in my head, even on paper, the word customer for member. So I'm just wondering what the value add bit is here, and how do you see that interacting, and what sort of differences or synergies there might be? Yeah,
so the customer sometimes is the member is sometimes the customer in a co-op, but sometimes not, right? So there'll be examples where like maybe we're a design consultancy, a worker co-op, and our customers are tech agencies. Yeah. So then we have a separation which is really distinct, and then but the workers have a relationship with the co-op which is very distinct from the customer relationship, and they have different expectations. And so the worker relationship is, well, we're expected to come in every day, and it's going to be our main gig, and we're going to see it as our main gig. We're going to turn up every day. We're going to put a lot of effort into it, and we all see this as a way of growing, maybe we're growing our personal wealth because we're building a vibrant consultancy that's got all these rich customers, and it's a way for us to take some control over our career path or something like that. So that's the kind of member relationship bit there. In the circumstance where the customer and the member are the same people, then I think you wouldn't bother putting an extra you wouldn't put this in an extra panel in, because you wouldn't need it for customer segments versus member segments either.
Yep.
But in the cases where it's separate, I would say you'd need that. Yep. So then member segments is like what we were talking about before with, getting towards that with personas. I think if you've done 50 interviews with prospective members, then you've probably got a pretty good understanding of what it is that they would want, and what they're trying to achieve and all that sort of thing. And so, 50 would be a starting point. And then you could start saying about your member segments, oh, there's Barbara, and she's like, she's looking for this kind of thing. And then you could embellish that, in the personas separately. But so in the Incubator Co-op, maybe the member segments are people who have a passing interest in incubators, in co-ops, and they're just curious, and so they think, oh yeah, $25, I'll cop that just to have a look and be interested, but I don't think I'm going to actively, participate in projects. I might just watch a bit, and so that might be a segment of kind of like people that are just interested but not super active. And then there might be another bunch like you guys that are active founders, where the co-op project that you're working on, or the project that you're working on, is your life, and you really got to make that work. And that's so it's your passion, and you've aligned your passion with your with your work life, and so that's you spend most of your time doing that. And so they would be in the incubator co-op, they're two different segments, and they have different aspirations around what they get from the service, and they have different needs. So if you're in the first group and you're not really interested in participating in projects, you just want to find out about cool stuff and maybe learn a little bit about, how co-ops work, you're probably not that interested in treaties and like which Wardy, I hope you've explained treaties and how they work, or I'm sure you have. You're probably not that interested in treaties. You wouldn't be interested in, how to exchange value and do those sorts of things. But in your case, you might be much more willing to have a look at those things and see how that would fit with growing your project, progressing your project. So that would be how those member segments, how they come to life. Does that make sense, Moira? Useful? Yeah. Yep. So again, in any of these tools, it's sort of like I was saying before, there's thousands of tools, and it's just about using the right one for the job and then getting out of it what you can. And a lot of that's the discussion and the debate that you have with your team around, the content. That's what gets you closer to something of value. I can see chat coming in. From Amy, yeah, different color textures for each. Oh yeah, cool. Amy's saying she uses different color textures and posters to fill in the different canvases as it relates to each segment. And then you could just, if you had enough, if you wanted to do it, you could just say, member/customer segments, and then use colors. So that's totally cool. I like that. Whatever works. That's good. Okay. Maybe one last question or thought, comment?
So I'm just reflecting upon what we had the other week with Sharon Eads' video about the audience segmentation. Am I right? And you weren't here with that, Paul. So
I wasn't. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so Wardy might be able to answer this better. Is so that we looked at that audience segmentation issue and how that you need to actually have an engagement strategy for each different audience segmentation, a value proposition for each audience segment, a different type of customer relationship with each audience segment. You're going to have different channels for each audience segment, and you're going to use different resources for each segment and different types of activities for each segment. And so I'm sort of seeing that this one canvas is actually, there's probably at least, if you've got, say, 10 segments and you're going to have 10 versions of this, is that, am I on the right track with that, or am I just no idea?
No, look, I can see where the confusion has come, but this canvas is a business model canvas, so there will be common things to like the key partners and the activities, cost structures and revenue streams. But what you're doing, where audience segmentation, which Sharon went into, sits within this business model canvas, is probably in customer segments and between it and channels. So what she was saying is that within your business, and to do community engagement effectively, you're going to probably talk to financiers, you're going to talk to would-be members, would-be customers, would-be suppliers and employees or contractors, and you're going to want to present what you're doing in their language, and ideally to such an extent that they would then talk to their crowd and position you appropriately. So audience segmentation is about helping your channels and helping your market segments understand who you are and tell their audiences about you. This business model canvas, you know, is probably a more broad tool than the audience segmentation, and it's just one of the several tools that, you know, Paul's mentioned, which includes prototyping and, you know, visioning with a disowned and integrated future. All of these are really to make sure that the core thing, i.e. your value propositions for members and for customers, if the member and customer are different, if they're not there, neither is your business. So to put it in Verge terms, like if you've got a value proposition for customership, you know, let's get together, share resources, make an intentional community that supports one another. That could be a strong customer value proposition. However, the member value proposition, are you willing to do sociocratic, you know, development? Are you willing to be an active member in the creation of the co-op so that it hits its primary activity? You know, somebody might qualify for the customer value proposition, but not sit actively as a member value proposition for them. And tools like this will help you unearth those questions and get the responses. And that might help you then go, okay, well, the sorts of members that we actually need obviously have to respond to the customer value proposition and these other things. And that'll help you communicate, you know, better. Hope that answers the question.
Good stuff. Yeah, it's a good one as well. Amy's saying put the purpose at the top of the canvas. I think that's, yeah, absolutely